Hey, abuse is often spoken about in the context of women and children, yet across the continent and also the world, many men are also victims of physical, emotional, financial, and even sexual abuse. Their experiences are often silenced by stigma, shame, and cultural experiences of Africa. Joining us from Lesotho, we have Motebang, who is a family wellness marriage officer and counselor. Mkhulu Zulu, thank you for joining us there on the line. Let's start with you, Calvin, and tell us a little bit about the work that you do so we get a context on how you feature in this conversation. Welcome, Calvin.
Thank you. Thank you. I am the family therapist, wellness provider, predominantly focusing on the wellness of the marriages and family. I am operating in Lesotho. My organization is called Effective Counseling Services. I've been operating for 42 years now.
All right. Yeah. And Mkhulu Zulu, tell us a little bit about the Kwa-Nobamba Family Spiritual and Wellness, Mental Wellness Institute. Tell us a little bit about your work there.
Yes, thank you, and good morning to the listeners, and good morning to Dade in Lesotho. Yes, Kwa-Nobamba Family Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute, we focus mainly on families. So we bring families together to resolve family conflicts. We bring married couples together to resolve conflicts within marriages. And we also deal with children and men. We've got a program called Mpato, where we groom young boys to either transition to manhood. So we bring young boys together with their fathers and we groom them. So that's just part of the program. But in a nutshell, we bring families together and we assist families to resolve conflicts.
Well, I'm so glad that both of you are people who engage on a daily basis with family, because if you look at the family setup, I guess the nuclear family setup, which isn't really much of a norm these days, but, women, their children, and those are the people that society focuses on a lot, especially if we're having a conversation about abuse. Calvin, how often do you even hear or engage with men who come to you about abuse in your practice?
I come across quite a lot of men who are experiencing abuse. The problem is that most of men do not come for counseling because of the norms, the taboo that men should rather keep their own conflicts and challenges and carry them on their own. But a few that do come, they are really going through a lot of torture, I'm telling you, emotional, verbal, psychological, and otherwise.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about that. And let me take the same question to you, Mkhulu Zulu, around the issues of abuse that men face. Because when we were speaking about this earlier on, my colleague Peter was like, what kind of abuse? Is it women abusing men or men being abused by other men? And that's where it gets complicated when you speak about men abuse, isn't it?
Yes. Look, since we started the program, because we created a safe space for men to open up and talk to each other as well, and for young boys to also be able to engage on the issues. We have realized that men do go through the challenges of abuse, and not just with the partners. You see, if we limit it to the partners, sometimes we lose the essence of the abuse. Men get abused even by their families. Men get abused within the family structures, where especially when a man is unemployed, they don't have money, they don't make a contribution, they have been isolated, they have been treated badly, and all those things. So men start experiencing abuse from a very young age. Sometimes the things that your mother says about your absent father, such things. It's part of the abuse that men grow up with, and they internalize it. They don't talk about it, and then when they meet partners, sometimes they revolt. They remember all the things, the bad things that have been said, and then being pushed around and all that. Then you find that men now beginning to be abusive themselves. So that's the anger with them for the longest of time. So I also see couples where you find that men, when we have in couple sessions with the high things and all that, men don't speak. It's women who talk. Women are gifted in talking. They will talk about the experiences and all that, and the men will just keep quiet and then they don't talk. But when you meet them in the part of session, then they start opening up, And when you listen, you realize that even within marriages and relationships, men go through a lot, but they don't talk about it. And maybe also because of the way that we run our campaigns, men start believing that the abuse is only, we recognize only the abuse when it happens to women. Sure. And maybe when you talk about it as a man, nobody will take you serious.
Okay.
So men do go through a lot of abuse, both emotionally, sometimes physically, and also most of the time it's financial.
Okay, we're going to take a bit of a break there. I'd like to deal with that area that you highlighted, Mkhulu Zulu, the reality that men don't like speaking amongst other genders around their shame and their pain and maybe even their abuse. I wonder why that's the case. And then when we find ourselves speaking to one another, that's the only time we feel safe enough to say, you know what, I have gone through this abuse. This is how I feel. Is it because of the societal, stigmas that we have around abuse and men? We'll continue the conversation after the break. What's your take on it? Remember, you can join us on our live stream and give us your comments. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa, and also on our YouTube page at Channel Africa 1 is the handle.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9.
Former politician and diplomat. He's the leader of the Democratic Alliance Party at one stage, and also served as South Africa's ambassador to Argentina, Uruguay and Paraguay. Ambassador Tony Leon, if you were party leader now and in the GNU, what would you be pushing for?
I can speak with some direct experience because, as you might know, I was actually one of the negotiators of the GNU last year when it was formed. What I'd be pushing for is to hold the government or the president's feet to the fire on actually operationalizing the agreement that was implemented. Unfortunately, that agreement has been honored only in its breach. And I think, go back to basics and just say, okay, we're not going any further with this arrangement until we actually implement these steps.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine.
The KZN Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Millvest Advisory and City of Mkhulu, bring you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum Africa. By positioning these regions for sustainable growth, TIFA helps drive their economic ambitions while providing access to critical capital, networks and strategic insights on investment in trade in services sectors such as tourism. Join us for TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa. Be part of the movement transforming tourism and infrastructure in Africa.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
We continue with our GBV focus in this hour of the show, speaking about abuse of men. Yes, we usually speak about, gender-based violence with men as the perpetrators, as the main perpetrators of violence and abuse against others. However, we're switching the look and the view today to look at when men are abused. We still have with us Kelvin Motebang, family wellness marriage officer and counsellor from Lesotho, as well as Kwa-Nobamba Zulu, founder of Kwa-Nobamba Family Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute. Well, let's bring in Kelvin into the conversation once again. Kelvin, when we speak about talking, it's one of I guess, the simplest ways to a path towards healing when we mention abuse, whether healing or maybe even to get justice in that note. But as much as we know, men really don't speak, and not just with their partners, but they also don't speak amongst themselves when it comes to issues of abuse. There are a lot of social constructs, of course, why this is, but let's chat about that. Who should be creating space for men to speak out about abuse? Calvin, are you there? Okay, I think I'll...
Yeah, I'm on the line.
Okay, yes. I'm asking you that question. Who should be responsible to hold space for men to speak about the abuses that they go through?
What should happen is that we should, in community, create the platform where men should feel comfortable to open up. Because by virtue of who we are as men tend to be conquer-oriented. Even when they are defeated, the attitude of being a conqueror, the winner, still remains within them, to the point that they end up dying with the struggles because they think that if they admit that they have failed or they are failing, they will be surrendering to, they will be creating problems for themselves to become victims. We need to create the platform where men can feel comfortable, flexible, and, constructive to open up and say what their challenges are. That should be created by the community or the society, whether be it in the church, be it in Bezos, in the community, in the village, be it, at school. Our boys should start being exposed to the reality of life's challenges, and then make them feel comfortable to open up and speak about their challenges.
Mm-hmm. Calvin, staying with you before we go back to Mkhulu-Nobamba Zulu, I think we're also not self-starters. That's one of the issue here. Self-starters as men to have these conversations openly. Most of the time we do spend time together as men, but the topics then go like completely different. We try to have conversations that affirm our masculinities, affirm our responsibilities, but not those conversations that allow us to be vulnerable. How important is it that even in our friendships, even in our family environments, as uncles, as fathers, as brothers, as friends, that we self-initiate these vulnerable conversations?
We need to expose or to create the platform whereby the exposure of the men's pattern of thinking should actually be prepared to open up. Because men on themselves are closed. Like I said, they think that opening up would make them vulnerable. Rather, as you say, talk about this and that. They talk about material things, the car they drive, the house they want to build, how smart their wife is, and the like. But talking about themselves, to actually open up and say, look, this is who I am, this is where I'm falling short, this is where I'm struggling. They feel like they're exposing themselves, they're making themselves vulnerable by doing that. So we need to create the platform for men to realize that opening up does not create any vulnerability to them in any way. We should create those platforms, like I said, from various approaches, church, community, whatever.
Yeah. Mkhulu, you look at family wellness from a very spiritual and I guess traditionally African perspective. In that perspective, what are the healing methods that can be put in place when men are going through the vulnerable moments of abuse?
Prepared those spaces and created those spaces for us. They were just infiltrated, by the wrong people. And, when we were growing up, it still happens even now. The culture of Lebollo, taking men to the young boys to the mountain. And it was not just only about circumcision. They would sit around the fire and the elders would advise them about manhood, talk about those issues and men to open up and all that. It's no longer happening now. because, it has been infiltrated by wrong people and it has been destroyed. That is why young men end up dying in the mountains and all that. So that platform had been created before. It's always been there. Like in Tate, they say we need to create more spaces even in all the social structures, your churches, in business and all that. We need to revive that and that is very important for us to do that. But in African spirituality, we have something that we call intambuluko. I don't know in Lesotho what they call it. Intambuluko helps us because I use it with families. It's a conflict resolution method. It helps people within the family, even young children, to learn how to open up, to learn how to talk about how they feel, and when things happen, things that make them angry, things that make them happy and all that. If we can assist our families and reintroduce this culture of intambuluko so that we are able to see problems even before they happen, amongst our children, that will assist us a lot, because I've been using this method for the longest of time, and we have successfully assisted many families come together and heal together with this method. So in African spirituality, those tools are provided for us to use them. It's just that sometimes we find ourselves practicing other people's cultures that we don't even understand, and then we lose ourselves and we lose our way of doing things, because you must be connected with who you are, and it must be connected with your cultural practices for it to work for you.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and I think we definitely need more conversations like this, because not only are they not happening in society, but they're not happening in general. Conversations about men that have been abused, and maybe that's also part of the reason why men shy away from speaking out and seeking help where abuse is concerned. Really quickly, before we wrap it up, can we get your contact details, Kelvin as well as Mkhulu? I'll come to you first, Kelvin.
Well, my email is effectivecounseling@gmail.com.
Great. Mkhulu, yourself?
You can get me at 065-601-7055.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, through this conversation, there will be men reaching out who need to speak about these kinds of concerns. That's Motebang, Family Wellness Marriage Officer and Counsellor from Lesotho, and Kwa-Nobamba, Zulu, founder of Kwa-Nobamba Family Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute, in today's GBV Focus, speaking about men being abused. It's 9:30 Central Africa time. Let's get our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.